Hey there, I'm Dean Walker. I'm founder of a little organization called Living Resilience here on the interwebs. And this is a video, this is a learning segment that's a part of our Community of Practice program. It's for the people who've gotten their toe in the water, watched one or two of our introductory level courses online in the Living Resilience online community space, which you can find the all the information that you need about how to get into that community space and how to find out more about the community of practice in the show notes for this video. So if you're unaware of all that, I'd recommend that you listen anyway, that there's going to be plenty of value here. But know that there's a lot of kind of information and shared experience that the folks in the community of practice are coming into watching this video with that extra degree of shared experience, shared language in what the body of work is here in Living Resilience, which is, of course, to support and resource the collapse-aware and collapse-acceptant communities around the world. And we do it in what I believe is I haven't seen anybody do this kind of work at this level yet. And that doesn't mean it's not happening. I just am not aware of it. So if you happen to know of other groups that are offering this level of experiential and transformation-based work, providing that quality of work and that depth of work to the collapse-aware and collapse-acceptant communities, please let me know. So let's get on with it. What this is going to be is a very lightly edited, it's turned out to be a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. But that's the way it goes with this particular author who's speaking in the UK for, I believe it's his first time. And it's an author that he is an author that I have immense respect for, deep appreciation for. He's an author that we've had in our book club in the past year or so. We've had My Grandmother's Hands. And of course, the author of that book is Resma Menakem. And again, just deep respect and deep bow to Resma for his work. I'd also like to mention another of his books that I've found deep resonance with, and that is The Quaking of America, which he wrote after the January 6th attack on the Capitol a few years back here in the USA. And I got to say, there are two things that I just have to mention here, like why I have such a prominent focus on Resma's work and his words in this particular presentation and video. One is in all of his books, he has an embodiment orientation for the person who's reading the work. And particularly in Grandmother's Hands, he gave us a very clear, embodied way of reading the book in the first place, but then at the end of each chapter, very embodied and very clear practices that we could take on. And those of you who've heard me talking about the collapse-aware and collapse-acceptant communities and the resources that are available to us, there's an awful lot of content even in this space now, whereas there wasn't, say, 7 years ago when I released my book, The Impossible Conversation. There was just not much at all. You had to really search. So now what there seems to be quite a bit of is folks who will write books about collapse or about climate change or climate anxiety and mental health issues with existential global predicaments going on. And those are all great. I really just don't want to talk smack about anybody and their work that they're offering to the public, because most human beings on the planet are not well prepared for what's coming, what's present now, and what's coming, which is an ever escalating uh, level of stressors at virtually every level of the human experience. So, yeah, that's the short picture of what I'm predicting, and why we're doing this work in the community of practice is to expand our capacities to be present in the face of those ever escalating um, predicaments and stressors. So there's that. That's the first of two elements that I find really compelling and useful, deeply useful from Resma Menakem. The second is particularly in uh, the quaking of America, that were quite narrowly focused compared to Grandmother's Hands, which preceded it. He was just rocked by what he saw during, of course, the January 6th attack on the Capitol. But what he started as he started to research what's going on and then follow it more closely afterwards, he started to see trends that I have also seen before, during, and after that attack time. And they have to do with what I would call, he doesn't call, but I would call it the energetics. On the quite personal level, for all the people involved, all the people who are on the perpetrator side, all of them on the victim side, and everybody in between, we have an energetic signature in this country right now, which is continues to grow. And I would assert that it is off center. It is off center for every person involved, no matter where they are on the scale of engagement with, how responsible they were or how active they were in that one event. What we're talking about is a trend across our entire culture, and especially across racial lines. You can remember not too long before and after that January 6th attack, we had Black Lives Matter, massive nationwide protests and so on. This is a good time to just put a cap on that, which is that I really appreciate and resonate with Resma Menakem's energetics-based and culture meets culture-based dynamics that he's talking about, and then how we can go into our bodies and bring healing of the trauma that we've carried for generations, whether we're on the white end, the slave owner end, and so on, the white supremacist end, or whether we're on any of the ends of the genocide, the slavery, the massive traumatic onslaught that made up the early centuries of the history of what we now call America, and have persisted ever since. So you get it about that's that my resonance with Resma is reason number two for giving you this hour-long edited version of a recent talk from him in the UK. And so why I'm bringing this to the community of practice is that I believe that he spells out quite clearly how to have a significant, in fact, possibly transformative and possibly healing of collective and individual trauma response to the practices that he suggests, the framing or the context that he's suggesting in this talk, um, that's a very important shift for us in community of practice, in the people that are currently in community practice here in Living Resilience. We're formulating a next level of deepening our practices individually, and also deepening our relationship, where we can sit in circle together, we can hold space for one another in an ongoing way that is at a much deeper level than we've ever known before. And, I'm going to seek forgiveness rather than permission with Resma Menakem. I've never met the man. I deeply respect him, and I wouldn't know the first thing about how to reach him. I'm taking great poetic license here, and I do not mean to be appropriating or fixing white people by borrowing his words. I'm doing my best to stay far from that, and to just be in great appreciation for the work and the words that Resma brings to us in this particular conversation and in all of his books. And I'm finding it quite easy, as I have in the other two books that I've mentioned, to find a way to translate that so that I can, without, again, this is my intention. I believe that I'm on track with it, and I'm open to your feedback if you don't agree with me in how I'm interpreting a possible way for me as a white person to be listening, especially toward the end of what you'll hear in his talk, how he's suggesting white people should take this on. Like, we should not be reaching out to people of color, bodies of color, to be our gurus, our facilitators, our shoulder to cry on, or somebody to explain this stuff to us. So that's what I'm trying my best to do. And I believe that if we, the folks in the community of practice, we take this on in that kind of a interpretation of, or an adaptation of his words to us and to everyone, to his audience there in the UK. I'm excited to see the depth of our shifting, the depth of our intimacy and relationship with one another. And I reach for, and I believe all of us will reach for, the level of engagement of white body with white body, and for us to create that relationship and that intention, that shared intention, to work on the healing of trauma and our own. From, again, here what he suggests is a good place to start looking for folks with this color, skin, and body. I believe that we can engage with that. I have a great hope and a great intention that we can and will do that. So it's an exciting time. It's an hour-long video. It's will be a little longer now that I'm putting all this setup in it. Again, if you are new to this work of living resilience, the work of community of practice here, I think you're going to find that through what you hear from Resma is very much a reflection of, or a resonance with, what we hope to do here, what we intend to do here, what we find ourselves doing here, which is to embody as much of this material as possible. I don't know a more powerful way to do it. And we need the most powerful ways to do it, to do this connection, this healing, this growing of ourselves, and this holding space for one another. We need to do it in a new way. So that new way will involve bodies. And so, again, a deep bow and thanks to Resma Menakem for this wonderful talk and his books. I look forward to hearing feedback from the Living Resilience community of practice folks. And if you are watching this in the Poetry or Predicament podcast. I would love to hear any comments that you have, and especially any questions that you might have about how to engage. If your interest is piqued on how to engage with our work, you'll find a lot of information about how to do that in the show notes for the video. And you'll also find the information that you need to contact me by email if you'd like. Be happy to engage, answer questions that you've got. I'd be very interested in any feedback that you have about my interpretation of how we can adapt this work as I've been describing, and any suggestions that you would have to deepen it and to broaden it perhaps beyond Resma's work. And yeah, so anyway, open to your feedback. So I hope you enjoy this conversation, this presentation that Resma Menakem does in the UK, and hope to meet you at some time soon in one of our offerings here in Living Resilience. Thanks.
Thank you. Welcome, Resma.
Thank you. I've been doing this work for a long time. I've been doing this work like over 30 years, right? I know I look good.
You do.
It's all right. No, but I can't tell you how much I get from people. Like looking out and seeing all of these brown, black, Asian, indigenous, white faces. Sometimes when we're doing this work, we don't know if we're connecting with people and making an impact or serving in the ways that we want to. And I can't tell you how much this means to me. So thank you. Yeah.
Shall we get into it?
Yes. Let's do it.
I was going to give this spiel and read off Resma's bio, and it just doesn't do him justice. And his bio is incredible, and I recommend that you all read it. But it just doesn't do his work and what he is doing for generations to come and healing generations from way back. I can't put it into words. So, soak this all in. Resma, what are some of the things that played out in your life that led you to being in the space that you're in now, doing the liberatory work in the way that you do it now?
First off, may the ancestors guide what I say as well as what you say back to me. Honestly, when I look at my life, I see it as kind of a confluence of a number of different things, like both the places that I was resourced and nurtured, and the places that like almost tore me down and almost broke me, right? And I look at what were the opportunities both that I took advantage of and the opportunities that were missed, and how did both of those kind of shape the way that I understand the world and the way I kind of moor myself. And when I mean by moorings are, when I talk about moorings, I'm talking about something different than like morals, right? I'm not talking about this alignment that is unquestionable, right? I'm talking about that there are certain things and certain ways that I move that I realize that I move like that because of how I'm positioned. Not how others position me, but how kind of like the energetics of a certain situation and how I kind of quake with it, and we'll go, okay, yeah, I'm not doing that shit, right? I'm doing, right? That's moorings, right? And I think about my, just some of the people, both the ancestors and elders in my life that helped to condition and temper that mooring directly into my body. Like from my grandmother being able to say a million different things with a grunt. Right? We blow that shit off as if that's not intelligence. I'm serious. Like we think that type of stuff is just like throwaway. That moors you. Right? When you would be doing something, my grandmother go, You don't need a dictionary to figure what that means. That means pause, right? Collect yourself, right? And take some time. Because the next thing you do, I may need to get involved, right? Those are the moorings, right? When my grandmother sees me, and when I used to do music, and she would come, and she would go, Do you understand what I mean? That is an intelligence. Those are intelligences that we think, because of modernity and the flattening of modernity, that it's really nothing. And this is why in a lot of the work that I do, I talk about pausing, because you literally have to condition yourself to be able to work with the intelligences that we say we want. We want liberation. We want things to change. We want all that, but we're not conditioned to hold it. Literally, we're not conditioned to hold it. And we're certainly not conditioned to create enough moorings that allow what we think should come into existence to emerge forth. So when I think about how I got to this place, it's because of things like that happening a million times, right? Black women holding me, my wife holding me, my mom holding me, people when I was not at my best, when I was like crazy. Like this place this corporal place with, the structures and white body supremacy and all that different type of stuff will make you crazy in this body, a body that looks like this. It will have you questioning every atom of your body. And then you get up and you go to work. Right? And I think all of that helped me to now say in the ways that I say it with my, Kevin Hart says, say it with your chest. It's helped me kind of be like, oh, and can I say one? I don't need to say one more thing. Let me say one piece. One of the reasons why I'm able to say the things that I'm able to say and write the way that I'm able to write is because I'm starting to develop more intimacy with death.
Yes.
But not death in the way that we have constructed death, right? A lot of these structures have made death be this thing where we have to not talk about it, avoid it, move around it. And many of us come from cultures where there was an intimacy with death. We sat with people because there was an exchange of energetics that happened when you sat with people and they transitioned, right? Another mooring, right? And so death now is this entity in a black cloak with a sickle, right? Not watching my grandmother take her last breath. And what was transmuted in that process of watching her go and her laugh and her doing things as she was transitioning out. I remember, times where she was transitioning out, and she used to do this all the time anyway, right? My grandmother was funny, and she would fart. She was a big farter, right? And when she was transitioning out, we would go over to her house, and she had a little place, and I'd be sitting on the couch with her. Hadn't seen her for a while. I'd be sitting there, and I go, "Grandma, did you fart?" And she would just shake, right? But she was transitioning out. The way she held, this is gonna sound funny, the way she held on to the fart, right? Even as she was transitioning out and laughing and doing those pieces, those more me, right? And so the way, even with, and me and you both have talked about this, even with the death threats, even with all that different type of shit, I'm just like, I'm starting to develop a different type of, to me, death is more like, we got to start getting more intimate with an understanding that death is this piece that has to happen in creation. Mm-hmm. Like anything in creation has to decay to create nutrients for that comes through. We got death twisted, and so that's my answer.
Thank you. What a delicious answer. I'm going to just stay on grief and death a little bit. Death, I'm going to speak culturally British. Yes. We have a real immaturity, a real emotional maturity with speaking about death, being with death, and being with loss. And what I'm certainly understanding is you can't do liberation work in any meaningful way without grieving.
That's exactly right.
Without grieving and being with the heartbreak and the devastation of what we did to each other and what we often continue to do to each other.
Come on.
Without being with the grief and the heartbreak about the parts of yourself that you've lost.
Yes.
Without being the grief and the heartbreak of the relationships that we will lose and the relationships that will sever. But there is, and I'm understanding this more because I've been with grief, feels like forever, the past year. Grief, rage, grief. But, death isn't the end. Mm-hmm. It's never the end. It's a continuum that, like you say, the emergence. I love when we talk about the butterfly and just remembering we're not going to evolve without that. And I wish I could remember the quote, but there's a quote. Yeah. I feel like it's Audre Lorde. No, I can't remember who it is now. Let me not guess. But there's, they were talking about the amount of times they had to grieve the past version of themselves.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's inevitable. So I think we need to develop, a window of tolerance of being with death and being with grief, not just death when somebody dies, but all of the losses that are associated with doing this work and wanting better for each of us.
This it's so interesting that you said this thing about the butterfly. So I've been doing more and more reading. There's this sister named Elisa Garcia, and she does things around the butterfly. And she hit me with this thing about a year ago, and I was just blown away by it. She said that when a caterpillar starts to begin to move into the state, into the chrysalis state, one of the things that happens is that caterpillar begins to gorge on food. Like before it goes in, it starts to gorge and eat leaves and eat and eat and eat and eat, right? And what happens is that those enzymes, right? Those enzymes that are in the belly of the caterpillar are the same enzymes that start to break it down as it goes into the chrysalis. Y'all tracking what I'm saying? So that triggers this thing, these cells, and scientists call these cells imaginal cells. Think about that. Think about what I just said. Scientists call these cells imaginal cells. These cells both decay and keep equilibrium at the same time. Right? If you were at one point to cut open the chrysalis, all you would see is mush. And you would look at that and you'd go, well, this has no value. And you're totally missing potential. You're totally missing what's actually going on. Do you guys understand what I mean? And as she said that, I went on this kind of like crazy like rabbit hole, right? And one of the rabbit holes, I was reading this article, and the title of the article, and it just blew me away. The title of the article is this guy who does work on butterflies and genomes and all this different type of stuff. He said, it is the job of the caterpillar to resist the butterfly. That the resistance actually is what begins to spur the butterfly. Y'all tracking what I'm saying? Think about if we were moored in that as knowledge, as intelligence. Not as something that happens in nature, but something that spirals through the cosmos and through us and in nature. Think about that, like, religion can't hold that. Do you understand what I mean? Some of the things that me and Nova talk about are how do we begin, or how do we continue to kind of cultivate these pieces around not tips, not giving people tips, but liberatory practices and work. They're not the same thing.
And it's why I get, when I'm when I'm asked to speak at events, I rarely take questions from the audience because it's always these tips. And to me, they're not the same thing. And to me, they undermine the work. And they also fundamentally communicate with me that there is a misunderstanding about what the work is and what is required of us. Can we talk a little bit about... I was reading Bell Hooks' Sisters of Yam recently, and it's the first time I've read it, and there's something, Bell Hooks was ahead of her time.
Yes.
Like the imprint of liberatory practice and living in a world that's free from racism, the imprint is already there from these amazing black women, mostly who came before us. But I was reading something on there about us, our work, particularly those of us who are black in the room and working in racial justice, is to practice critical consciousness and to bring other people from our community on that path. In fact, I'm just gonna read a little passage because it was so fitting. When wounded individuals come together in groups to make change, let me read that again. When wounded individuals come together in groups to make change, our collective struggle is often undermined by all that has not been dealt with emotionally. Yeah. You hear those? No words necessary. And certainly what I'm experiencing, and I know you are as well, Resma, is the resistance to this work and the undermining and the minimizing that is happening from people cross-culturally or from within the same community. So I want to talk a little bit about why critical consciousness is important around that, and also decolonizing ourselves, and what you speak about blackness as principle, Resma.
Yeah. So first off, Bell Hooks was from the future. Now, when I say that, people think that I'm like doing this like little kitschy little thing. There are people that come to us that are not speaking to us for us. There are people that come to us, they're not speaking to us for us. They're speaking to us to condition us to bring forth the next. Right? Some of the people, there's some times right now that I'll get on YouTube and I'll listen to Nikki Giovanni or listen to James Baldwin or listen, you know what I mean? And I'll go, damn. You know what I mean? Like, just James Baldwin will say something, you know, how James Baldwin used to do. You know, so, you know, James Baldwin will say something, and I'll be like, God damn, like, how he do? That was back then, he was doing that because he was from the future.
Toni Morrison.
Toni Morrison, exactly. And we think that the messages are for us. They're not for us. They're for us to use and condition and temper so the next. That's why a lot of times our great people like that are so misunderstood. People don't understand them because we have yet to condition our ways, our understanding and our intelligences to be able to hold it. They are already, that's what I mean, they're Octavia Butler. Have y'all ever read it? Come on. From the future. And we try and encapsulate it for right, well, how can I use this right now? What can I do with this right now? Maybe what you need to do with it is pause. Work with it. Talk with other people with it. So moorings can start to develop, not information. So when I talk about blackness as principle, I'm talking about blackness as that which things emerge from. I'm talking, close your eyes. When I say blackness as principle, I'm saying blackness as though that which things emerge from. I'm saying blackness as womb. Blackness as dirt with seed in it. Even when you're looking at it, you may not see what's happening, but something is happening. It emerges. The very galaxy that we're in, they're saying, is emergent, is constantly emerging. Blackness as principle. Blackness as principle. In that emergence is also possibility and peril at the same time. Blackness as principle. The first representation on this planet as humanness was a black woman. And everything else, regardless of pigmentation, came through her. When I say blackness as principle, that's what I mean. Not just blackness as pigmentation, as principle. Open your eyes. Imagine if we started with that and we cultivated that as intelligence, as moorings, as how we get down. Do you understand what I mean? Whiteness, the idea, the construct of whiteness is designed to flatten. Flatten, make things routine. Anything that pokes up or pops out, cuts off the head. Literally, right? That's the whole idea of whiteness as construct, right, is that it flattens and makes everything seem impermeable. Like you look at white supremacy, you look at you know, now, you know, can I tell you one of the wildest things that translates, like I see this every place I travel, like especially where there's been colonial culture, right? White people get so fucking surprised at everything. Like everything surprises white people. Like when something happens, when somebody is writing an N-word and they find it in 2012 documents, white people go, here, oh my God. Like, I can't believe. And here's what happens, here's the translation. When we hear that, when bodies of culture hear that, we go, oh, I ain't fucking with you. I'll laugh with you, I'll come to dinner with you, I'll even be your friend, but I'm not doing that. To avail myself to that is too brutal for me to even play with. So even though it still looks like we're on the same accord, your surprise really means I am unsafe continuously, right? And because white bodies have not dealt with their own king-serf relationship stuff, right? For 1,000 years, poor white bodies caught the boots from less poor white bodies, from more powerful white bodies. Do you guys understand what I mean? Right after the fall of the Roman Empire, that stuff, like when we talk about the Dark Ages, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about brutality, right? That never has gotten dealt with among white bodies. I'm not even talking about us yet. But that feralness, that viciousness among white bodies to white bodies, that has never gotten dealt with. And so these pieces, when we're talking about liberation and liberatory and how do we begin to create something and not it be tips, it literally is body to body. It literally is, like in my trainings, one of the things I talk about, I was like, if I said to y'all, like if we were all homies and we was all friends, and I came to one of y'all and I said, I'm thinking about running a marathon, right? And I said, sis, I'm thinking about running a marathon. Sis, I'm thinking about running a marathon. And if you're my friends, you would all go, that's cool. I'm not running that shit with you, but that's cool, you know. I'm glad you thinking about this, you know. And we're not usually, I'll be at the finish line, I'll be, you know, you'll see me and all that different type of stuff, and you'll give me all the support, right? And then you had the bright idea to ask me a question, well, Resma, when are you thinking about running this? And I said, tomorrow. Right. Right. You like, oh, okay. Now I gotta ask other questions. Because I thought this was one thing, now it's something else, right? And the reason why you would ask me questions is because you know that what I'm about to put my body through, I am unconditioned to tolerate, even though I want it. Why do we think race is any different? Right? And so part of the work that me and Nova have been doing is how do you begin to slow it down so you can condition your body to work with this stuff? Like, let me just say one more piece. So black bodies that are in here, bodies of culture that are in here, indigenous bodies that are in here, Asian bodies that are in here, even if you come from people, even if you come from one line or lines that are white bodies, right? Right now, bodies of culture, just right now, I want you to close your eyes. Just close your eyes, and I'm gonna say this thing, and just don't say anything. Just notice when you hear me say it, what happens to you? What happens in terms of vibe, in terms of meaning making, in terms of image, in terms of sensation, in terms of imagination, just notice what happens. You are not defective. You are not defective. You live in a structure that is predicated on you being another species based on pigmentation. But you are not defective. You are not defective. You are not defective. You are not defective. You are not. You are not. You never have been defective. You are not defective. Right there. Right there. Right there. Right there. Some of your bodies has never heard another body, and particularly another black body or another brown body, say that to you. That's what's been in the background. That's not craziness. You're not crazy. That's the structure. That's the energetics of the structure. You didn't even know you needed to hear that. It becomes so decontextualized. You are not defective. We don't start there.
I'm just taking you all in. I remember the first time I heard you say that. I think I started cathartically sobbing. And I was having a good day. But the conditioning, even if you don't consciously believe that to be true, I learned unworthiness before I learned worthiness. And building worthiness, reminding myself that I'm enough just as I am, will be work that I have to do until the day that I die, because that socialization happened from before I was even born.
Because it happened to your mama's, daddy's, mama's, daddy.
There we go. And, you know, Resma, I'm not going to talk trauma with you because you're the expert in this, but the studies that show generations worth of trauma is going back to 14 generations now. This is our work to do. Thank you for doing that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I want to riff a little bit on kind of decolonizing our minds. There are quite a few healers, therapists, people working in therapeutic practice in the space, so I'd like to speak to this a little, because I've shared with my therapist, does therapy work as a black person? Because I think I'm going to be in therapy till the day that I die. So there's the therapy that we know it in the West is very individualized, right? And I personally believe on its own it's inadequate to remotely address the consequences of living in racist environments. However, what can we do, and how? I feel like there's a black tax with therapy. So in the same way there's a disability tax, it costs more to exist as a disabled person because we live in a world that's designed for people who are able-bodied. In terms of black people, I call it the black tax, in terms of I have to spend more money a month to make sure that I keep my sanity. I'm seeing lots of nods, right? So can we speak a little bit around, the work we have to do to decolonize our minds, but something around it can't all be on us as individuals, because a lot of this is structural. So
right. So one of the things that I say to people is that if you're struggling, get some therapy. Okay? If you're not struggling, get some therapy. Right? Get some motherfucking therapy if you can afford it, right? But therapy isn't liberation work. Don't get it twisted. Okay? And that what has happened to me did not happen to me individually. It happened to me communally. So developing individual responses to a communal horror is inadequate. Pause. Let me say that again. Only developing individual responses to a communal horror is inadequate. You may feel better, but it is inadequate to contend with the weight. Yeah, right there. The charge. Do y'all understand what I mean? The charge. So, once we get a little bit better individually, we literally have to begin to figure. Remember when I said earlier about ancestor hooks being from the future? We literally have to begin to do things to help that future come into existence. So when I get a little bit more room, how do I then allow that resource to be of service to another body? Because I know the other bodies that look like me are walking around with the weight, with no room. Do you understand what I mean? So yes, get your therapy if you can afford it. Also, when you get some room, start thinking about ways you can move your hips with other people that look like you. That you can sit there and you can grunt and do big ass belly laughs. Right? That as black men, we can go frolic. Just run and laugh and giggle and reclaim the softness and the receptivity, right? Like, create instances where that can happen. Not movements, instances. But if you get enough instances with other black men, let me tell you something. When I said earlier about blackness as principle, one of the things that blackness is, like if you go to a museum, right? Let's say you go to a museum, one of the museums here where they done stole all our shit, right? Let's say you go to one of those museums and you're looking at, a Kemetic or Egyptian mask, right? And you walk into the room and you see this thing and you go, oh my God, that's beautiful, right? And you're looking at it and you're looking at it from across the room and you go, that is the most beautiful piece of art that I've ever seen. And let me say, y'all realize that when you're going in and you're looking at Benin masks, or you're going in and you're looking at Kemetic or Egyptian sarcophaguses and all that different. You're looking at grave robbing, right? You realize you're looking at grave robbing. If you walk up close to that mask, you see things that you couldn't see when you were across the room. You start to see cracks, right? Modernity and whiteness and white supremacy is like that. It looks like it's impervious. It looks like there's nothing to do but accept it. But there's cracks. In those cracks are the blackness, the pause. It is our job to accentuate the cracks so something else can emerge. Not to accentuate the cracks and demand that there's a tree that's already grown inside the cracks, but accentuate the cracks so that which we think needs to be in place in the future can have room. Do you understand what I mean? So when we're thinking about these pieces, y'all, we really have to think about this opportunity to accentuate the cracks. When me as a heterosexual black man see black, trans, and gay men and women doing things, it is my job to accentuate that. Why? Because the more cracks they make, the more room for me. The more cracks that come into existence through their bodies, the more room I have to be softer, to be able to be receptive, to be able, do you guys understand what I mean? That's the work. And so all of the shit that I come up against around the constriction that happens with my siblings, with my black, trans, gay, bodies of culture siblings, right? That's my shit to condition around. And I must do that and get to the edges of that so more room is developed for the future. At that point, you become like bell hooks. You become from the future. That's why don't nobody want to hear what the fuck you got to say. That's why nobody wants to hear it. Because you are literally speaking Martian. And I'm not talking, let me say this, I'm not talking about this Shangri-La bullshit about we should all get together and we should all just sit and talk and we just have a conversation about race. You can't, what did Jack Nicholson say in that movie? You can't handle, right? You can't
handle the truth.
You can't handle the truth because you're not conditioned. You're not conditioned. Our job is to start getting conditioned. And let me say this just to the white bodies in here. Your job is to start getting conditioned. You white bodies have no racial agility or efficacy. As a collective, none. Don't come up to me when I'm signing them damn books. I'm serious. I'm going to go off on your ass. Don't come up to me and ask me and tell me and read out your damn racial resume about all of the black kids that you done adopted or how many black women you done fucked or all. I don't care. I don't care. That's not what I'm talking about. Here's the quiet little secret in the white collective. When it comes to race, most white bodies can't stand to be in the room with each other. I'm not talking about cookies or a book club or kale or whatever the fuck, right? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about we're going to get in a room and we're going to stay to each other, stay in that room with each other, and we're going to keep coming back with each other. And the commitment is one of us is going to bury the other. And we're going to talk and deal with this race shit between us. Not bringing a black-ass guru in. Not bringing an indigenous guru in. Not bringing an Asian guru in. Do you guys not turning into a fucking yoga class? Y'all will turn anything into a yoga class. Stay with each other and bury each other around race specifically. Race has a 400-year-old charge to it, and white bodies have built in all of these off-ramps. That's what DEI means. I call it DIE now, right? That's what and now they're using belonging. Have you heard that shit?
Inclusion.
Yeah, now they're using belonging. It's the same shit. It's centered around white comfort because they know that if you bring white people in the room and somebody is in there talking like how Resma's talking to your ass right now, they'll go screaming out of the room. So you got to talk to them about diversity and inclusion and equity and belonging. And you know what never gets asked? Belonging to what? Diverse from what? Inclusive of what? We never ask that. And that's why many times bodies of culture go, I ain't going to that shit again. I get filleted in those types of things. And white people come out just enlightened. Just fucking like floating or like want to talk to
vex.
Yeah. Or want to talk to me about fucking George Floyd or some other heinous fucking act. Black mothers are burying their babies. And you want to talk to me about that. And you haven't done any collective work with each other, but you want to talk to me about the Asian body that just got destroyed. Or the indigenous, in America, in America and in Canada, there were once 100 million indigenous people on that land. 100 million. There's less than 5 million. And we never ask in terms of just the way that we get down. How did that happen? They just found over 700 indigenous babies' bones behind these schools in Canada. And we just keep moving. We just keep moving. 100 million people, and there's less than 5 million. And we want to say, look at them. What happened? And how does that happen and keep reverberating through people's bodies? White bodies, as a collective, don't even know how to begin to work with that because they haven't worked with their own shit from white bodies destroying their bodies. More powerful white bodies destroying and taking and annexing land. More powerful white bodies raping and crusading and what's the word? Inquisitions and witches. That shit ain't been dealt with. And so by the time white bodies, and poor white bodies come face to face with somebody that look like me and her, well, I'm not fucking human, so you can't be fucking human. And to prove that you're not human, we're going to create a whole pigmentocracy based on pigment as human or not. And the darker you are, it's not about just not being human. The darker you are, the more speciesness you are. Everybody that's not housed in a white body is considered species. The term race was used to denote species. They grafted that idea on pigmentation. They did it in China. They did it in India. It's the same playbook. Pigmentation. A pigmentocracy. You're not gonna do that by having a fucking book club meeting. You're not gonna get at that. We're gonna stay with this as white bodies, and I'm going to bury you, or you're going to bury me. Imagine what could possibly emerge from that. Not DEI, not belonging, culture building.
Thank you. We're nearly out, and I wanna. There's two pieces I want to end on. Are we going to end on dreams?
Okay.
So just before we get there, there was something you shared about the art, and when you go to museums and you get closer to the piece of art, you see the imperfections, you see the cracks, and riffing off the flattening of whiteness. I also think the flattening of whiteness, certainly how I describe it, and I don't want to stay here too long, is also the kind of the putting a pink bow on shit, and a sheen, and
right.
making everything clean, and actually when there's nothing but dysfunction underneath. But there's something in the cracks that I just want to riff off.
Yeah.
I was singing
Oh, yeah, come on.
recently in a recording studio, and I'm going to shout out for Yard House, because they're doing Yard Art House. They're doing beautiful work around liberatory practices here in the UK. And one of the things they do is they have these art schools where they just invite you to come and create art for no other reason but for yourself, and to imagine a world that's different. And so I went there. And I thought, I'll just go for an hour. I was there for half the day, and I thought, right, how am I going to get there again? And I went a few days later. And there was a music studio there, and I thought, I haven't sung in a music studio for a while. Let me just see what they're doing. And I start to sing, and they invite me to sing, and they said, Nova, where's your voice range sit? I said, I'm alto, which is quite low for the non-singers in the room. And so we were singing, and I was very nervous, easing into it. And then the sound wizard, I'll call him, changed the key, and it went right up. And I thought, well, that can't be my part, because I've told him I'm alto. And he said, no, get this. I want you to sing this bit. I'm slightly agitated, thinking, why are you asking me to sing this part? I've told you I'm alto. And so I thought, right, let me just go for it. And I tried, and my voice broke. And it cracked. And I felt a little bit ashamed, very embarrassed, very exposed. There's a nakedness around not singing to the perfect sound or singing out of tune. And I was sweating, and I felt not good enough, all of my work to do. And I thought, well, I don't know why he's done this. And then he said, and I know this will sound funny, but I wanted to exploit your vocal range. And he said, and I thought, it was fine. He will just smooth that bit out. He'll flatten that out with an edit.
That's right.
And then he played it back, and the crack was there. And I looked at him thinking, why is that there?
That's right.
And he said, because that's where the gold is. That's what I want to hear. So there's something in us welcoming those cracks and avoiding flattening things out, and being with the tension of imperfection or noises that, that the flattening is anti-human.
That's right. That's
You
exactly
want to
right.
be doing the
That's
opposite.
exactly right. It is anti-human,
Yeah.
right? Everything that you're good at, there is no more fucking room for you there. Do you understand what I mean? There's no more room there. You're already good at that. Now you could tweak it and you can do this and you could do, but usually when we're good at something, we do it all the time and we practice it, right? So there's really no more room. This happens in relationships. This is what my new book is about, Monsters in Love, is that all of the things that you're good at is actually what's squeezing the shit out of your relationship. Let me give you an example. So our virtues perfectly line up with our limitations. So one of the reasons why we can't get at some of the conundrums in our relationships is because we're coming at it from a virtue side. I'm a good dude, I'm a good black man, I provide for my family, I do all of that, right? I'm a good homemaker, I take care of my kids, I take care of my husband, I do that, right? Virtue, right? But the limitation of it is that you run the fuck over everybody. You don't accept feedback. Do you understand what I mean? But you're coming at it from a virtuous side. So when your partner says, you know, I need you to pay more attention, you're like, I'm already, because you're coming at it from virtue. Do you guys understand what I mean? And so the only way, especially in terms of, and relationships will keep pushing you towards the bottlenecks, right? That's why stuff keeps happening, same stuff over and over and over again. That's the bottleneck. That's because there's something for you not to learn, but to grow up through, right? So the only place, like when you and your partner, after about 5 years, like at the beginning of relationships, you say, you get to decide what you don't want to do that makes you nervous, right? I get to decide, and so you make it very clear. I don't like touching that thing like that. I don't like doing that. I don't like licking on that. I don't like eating that. I don't like, right? You make that very clear, right? These are my boundaries, right? And then I get to do the same thing. And then after about 5 years, your relationship is boring as fuck because you're only doing the things that you can validate. And actually, the only place that's got any room is the shit that you don't want to do. The cracks. That's the opportunity. And most of us, when that happens, we want the engineer to go in and smooth it out. The engineer, you know, make me sound like Beyonce. Well, shit, damn. I mean,
What's wrong with you?
I mean, God, you know what I mean? Are you Beyonce? I can't make it sound. Do you understand what I mean? And we are not conditioned to sit with that. Listen to the cracks. What is it for me to learn about the quaking that happens when I hear my imperfections? What can I learn? How can I stay there and nibble on that for a little bit? I don't have to gorge on it. How can I nibble on that? How can I go back and do it again and be at home and practice with, you know, I crack when I hit that. I wonder in a year, could I hit that note? Okay, let me, right? Now you go back in a year later, you still may crack a little bit, but now it's something else. You can, you know, I don't know what the fuck, but right, you can, but you're right? Now the thing that used to be a limitation now has more room, literally more room.
Thank you. Resma, I wish I could speak to you for the rest of the day, but I know there's people in the room that want to meet you. So final question, and then we'll go to the back of the room and we'll have about 35 minutes to sign some books for you all. Resma, so much of this work is about imagination and dreaming. So if you would like to share, what are some of your dreams?
Well, I won't tell you some of the dreams. I'll say something about dreams. Dreams are where we process that which the corporal body can't even imagine. Have you ever been working with something and you dream and the ancestors start saying, not go do this, something like an image or something moves, right? And you go, you don't get the answer. It's not like on high. It's not bestowal, right? It's like something unwinds. That's not happenstance. That's literally how the corporal body works. You can't continue, like, we are not just a corporal body. We're a corporal body, we're an ethereal body, we're an elemental body, you know what I mean? Like, and so the processing of the elemental, the processing of the ethereal happens in the dreams. It doesn't happen in the cognition. It happens in the dreams. Not the answer, not the bestowal, but the working of it happens in the dreams. So for me, my caveat, my hope to everybody here is start to reclaim those pieces that you've chopped away as being not useful. Your dreams, the things that come up, get up and write it down. Not write down the whole thing, write down the word, draw it, come back to it. Maybe those things over time are literally intelligences trying to show themselves, not in cognition. And I don't mean, okay, go to a dream analyst. You don't need to do that. The image is not the answer. The image is something to be worked with and paused on, and then see what emerges from your pausing on it. Do you guys understand what I mean? So my hope is to reclaim those pieces that you already know. Begin to do practices that you already know. Begin to stay with it, not because you're going to find the answer, but because you are literally creating the architecture for the people that are yet to be here. That's why you do it. That's what I would say about dream.
Resma Menakem, you are a blessing to us all. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank each and every one of you. Please hang back for about 35 minutes and then we need to turn the room around, but I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us in another episode of the Poetry of Predicament. This podcast is produced by Dean Walker and the Living Resilience Alliance. Living Resilience exists to offer transformative support and resources to the collapse-aware and collapse-acceptant communities around the world. Our sole purpose is to curate and offer coaching, support groups, courses, and events that assist people in expanding their core skills, competencies, and capacities for facing a troubled, predicament-laden, yet still ineffably miraculous world.